Well, hello everybody. My name is RascalArt, and you're joining me today to play through Breach, a horror quest mod for Fallout 4 by myself. Um, Obviously this is probably a little self-indulgent, however. I want to take the opportunity just to walk through it myself. Obviously I've tested it many times, although today another modder by the name of ZP, I won't try and pronounce her actual name, um, has released a texture pack for the mod, which is obviously very flattering, so I'm going to give it a go and see what they came up with, whilst also talking a little bit about some of the design decisions that led us to the mod as it currently is, just for anyone who has even the vaguest passing interest in how mods are made, or at least how I make them. So we are here at Nahant Chapel. It's a lovely out-of-the-way spot, and more importantly, it's on the coast, which was obviously quite an important design element. I am doing my best to rock the classic Alien/Aliens Colonial Marines look. If you don't know, the mod is very heavily inspired by the Alien franchise, um, and my particular brand of body horror and pleasantness. So we're going to wander in and have a look-see today. Now, it is probably going to be rather dark in there. I believe that YouTube does not deal well with darkness. I have an ENB and a reshade on, but I may turn them off depending on how it looks. Let's ENB on. Well, let's see how it goes for now. So immediately coming in, we are faced with law, or at least, context for what on earth is going on in the form of this rather fishy-looking gentleman, who underneath the mask is a rather unhealthy-looking gentleman. So I could probably explain what's going on as it goes along, which may or may not be simpler for those of you who haven't played the mod, or maybe those that have but didn't quite grasp what I was aiming at. So, brother, the unbelievers seek to enter the deeps once more, just as they did before the false awakening. They must not delve too deep, or lay eyes on what lies below. Go now to the empty chapel along the coast, kill those you find there, and destroy their machines. We are blessed by he that dwells below, for one of the old kin will join us in you to rip and tear the unworthy. Once it is done, return to the mouth, so that we might give thanks to the father and the mother, Elder Marsh. Now, for anyone who's played any of my mods before, you're aware that I have a appreciation for the works of 1 H.P. Lovecraft and the Cthulhu mythos, and they also have a grounding in the Fallout games, most notably in the Dunwich Corporation and their various shenanigans. And I do like to build them in. So these guys are here very much as potentially foreshadowing of a future mod, but basically I needed a reason for things to go wrong for the people who joined this little adventure before us, namely the Gunners, who we will discover are all not doing so well. In the background you can probably hear me talking. I tend to do a lot of my own voice acting, simply because I don't like asking other people to do things. Although this mod is an exception, as we'll discover later on. So walking through, we're obviously coming into this area with its rather strange looking apparatus, hopefully intriguing the player. More evidence that the cultists moved through this area, not entirely having it their own way.
Please, if you're still up there, get this thing back online. Okay, I'll take you back.
So yeah, some environmental storytelling there about what on earth has forsaken those who have gone somewhere. At this point we don't know an awful lot. The gunner captain here carries even more setup for what's going on, namely a contract made by Dr. E. Scott. Obviously, yeah, bit of a homage to Ridley Scott, but also, sorry, Ridley Scott, not Ripley Scott. Ridley Scott, but also yet another musical theatre reference I like slipping into my mods. Namely that they've been hired to escort the client, Dr. Scott, and his associate Levi into Atlas Laboratories, secure the elevator to and from, and allow them to recover pre-war technology and research materials, and then get them out again. Lethal Force is loud, but the client is more important than the gunners. Then, swapping tack to clearly either a commanding officer. Something about this contract stinks. The doctor never asked if we'd done this kind of work before, didn't ask for equipment, experience, or anything, just wanted as many men as he could bring. I've never had a client more interested in headcount than capability. Watch yourself. So something's hinky even as far as the gunners are concerned. This terminal is inaccessible. Generally, with a named terminal, I'm hoping players are going to realise that they need to be able to unlock it somehow, and there is only one way to go at this point. So on we go with some more unfortunate gunners. Down into the basement. Let's see how the flashing lights look. I used quite a few flashing lights, and I do apologise for any more sensitivity. They're not massively strobing, but then I'm not really one to judge this. And here we have a look at one of the first creatures for the mod, who features not too much. Unknown creature. Now, in fairness, sorry, I'll just turn the light on. Not that it makes that much difference. Clearly a force to be contended with. And beautiful texture work there by ZP. He seems to be lying on top of someone else's arm. So, yes, these guys do resemble the anglers from the Nuka World DLC. However, they do have a few differences. Namely, the fins are significantly larger and they like the coral backs. And if you actually ever see one of these things alive, they are based off of the Deathclaw skeleton rather than the angler skeleton. So they do move quite differently. And again, I'm just going to be going full spoilers throughout this entire video. I should probably put that in warning beforehand, just to say if you're not interested in knowing more, stop watching, go play the mod, then come back and I'll explain everything. But anyway, if you are familiar at all with the Cthulhu mythos, hopefully these ones will speak deep ones to you, harking back to the cultists, their fishy nature, and their perhaps worship of certain aquatic deities, or at least beings. So anyway, we've come down, we've turned the light on, possibly revealing more corpses that the player was already originally aware of, and then leading them back. That's on, Captain's not doing well, but the terminal is now usable. So, when it comes to terminals and notes, I try and keep them as brief as possible, simply because people aren't really playing Fallout 4 to read excessive amounts of notes, but they are the most handy way of conveying information to the player. Now, the player might not pick on everything, or any of it, but hopefully if you jam as much information as there possible, even if it's only inferred, the player will take away a better idea of what's going on. So, in this one, most of this is verbal gumph, the important bit here being that power armor is prohibited, combined document mass may exceed certified safety limits. There's a reason for this, which I will talk about in a minute. Transit log, so again we are laying groundwork. All of these dates up here are pre-war, leading up to the day that the bombs fell. Again, General John McNamara. Starkey reference for those of you who know what I'm talking about. Leading down to here now, we're going to see quite a lot of confused machine code later on, indicating that someone has been messing with these systems who is very good at messing with these systems. So obviously I'm not going to specify a date because people's gameplays will take point at different points, but it's happened in the year that the player character wakes up. Start with the procedures. So, when it comes to getting into modded areas, now, the ever popular magic door in a place where it wasn't there before is always going to happen, and obviously I've used that to get down here. But with most of the best DLCs, like Far Harbor had the boat, Nuka World had the tram, and I mean stuff like the Point Lookout DLC remade for Fallout 4 also had a boat. I wanted something a bit different, but I also then had to work out mechanically how I would do it. So I came up with this pod idea. Now, the reason I didn't want players having power armor is that even in the earliest planning phases of the mod, I wanted to have underwater sections, or section, I should say, and having the player have their own power armor might negate my ability to control certain things. In the end, it probably wouldn't hurt that much if people brought down their own power armor. Doesn't mean they wouldn't be using mine, but well, never mind. So one of the means I had was, politely asking people on the terminal not to, but also having the movement between cells be activated by a piece of furniture that cannot be used in power armor. Now, technically, if someone really, really wanted to, they could get out of their power armor here and then try and squeeze their way around to the chair. However, I would recommend against that strongly because you'd probably lose it. For technical reasons, the pod that we are going to step out of is not this pod. It is located already down in the area of the dungeon that we are going to be moving to. The player simply teleports between the two. I took great reference from the opening of the game, actually, when you get into the cryopod in Vault 111. What actually happens is the player's controls are frozen, quite literally, obviously, fade to black, or fade to cryo, I should say, and then they are teleported into a different piece of furniture in a different cell where they then go through the Sigma care log and then again to the post-war world. So we can do something similar here. And I'm going to talk at you.
Atlas Laboratories welcomes you. As we begin our descent, please remain seated and keep all personal belongings secure. For your safety, power armor and unauthorized heavy equipment are prohibited aboard this elevator. You are traveling to one of America's most advanced underwater research facilities, where Atlas Laboratories proudly partners with the United States government to develop the next generation of defensive technologies for our nation. During your visit, please remain with your assigned escort at all times. Access to designated research areas.
So off we go. So where we're going to be now is already down in the labs, and basically we're going to do our best to create an illusion through screen shaking.
As we complete our descent, please
sound
remain
effects.
seated until the vehicle has come to a complete halt. During your visit, your assigned liaison will escort you through our development laboratories, testing ranges, and research divisions, showcasing the innovations that keep America prepared for tomorrow's challenges. Distinguished government, military, and scientific guests are invited to enjoy our executive accommodation suites, conference facilities, and Ocean View Observation Lounge throughout their stay. Thank you for choosing Atlas Laboratories. From the ocean floor to the front line, we're securing America's future.
Cool. That sound effect infers that we are now docked. If I didn't have immersive HUD on, then my compass and whatnot would reappear at this point, which indicates that player control has been returned to them. Here we go. So, I can't remember what EMB I have on, but I don't like how it washes out all the darkness, so I'm just going to turn it off. There we go. Now we're cooking. But I will turn the light on, because otherwise you won't be able to see anything. So we're here. I want to go straight into two things. One, we are not going back the way we came. And two, we are underwater, which obviously is always going to be a fairly significant part of the thing, but just to very much set the scene. One question I've had people ask me is why I have those fishy creatures at the beginning and then never use them again. And actually they do appear. In fact, one of them is watching us right now. It's just with the reflection, you can't really see him, but there he is, watching. So for anyone interested, the deeper cult-based angle on this whole thing is that, if you're aware of anything about the Cthulhu mythos, there are underwater cities populated by, let's just say, monsters. And this laboratory is dangerously close to one. They were delving too deep. They weren't a fan of that. Bombs dropped, problem solved, but now people are down here again. And so the deep ones want to make sure that no one is going to be messing with their stuff. And they play a very passive role in this. They are just here in case I ever want to do anything with them at a later date in a different mod. But we'll see. So, moving forward, well, visual storytelling. Something bad obviously went down here. Some cover, significant bloodstains, a radio that was hopefully inferred to be the transmitter that was talking up to above. So a last stand was made here, but there's a suspicious lack of bodies. Just to reinforce the fact that we are not going back upstairs. A, jump scare, because I'm a dick, and B, lights are gone. Off we trot. There's a mixture of doors throughout the mod, mainly these irises, because I thought they had a nice nautical theme to them, inferring that, you know, flooding is a thing they have to be prepared for. And then these more regular, recoloured Institute-based doors for everything else. Moving into the main atrium. I wanted an atrium, mostly just so I could utilise these vault-style arches to have a nice immersive underwater feel. That's a lovely retexture that ZP's done on the statue there. The globe is taken from one of the vanilla ones, and I just wanted to have something a little bit grandiose because this is a pre-war corporation. They tended to do things big and not have very good. So Breach is a music kicks in. The music is custom, so I don't have to worry about copyright infringement, thankfully. But anyway, the quest is non-marked. No, there is a quest running to you know, make things happen when I want them to happen, but there aren't any quest markers. I do like people to work things out for themselves, explore, not just run from point to point B. I know sometimes people get a bit lost, and for that I apologise, but it is possible. So visual cues being, you know, warning, power lost is in central hub, check relays in sub-level. That could be downstairs. But for now we're going to wander upstairs quickly. Because up here we have the first indicator that things are going a bit strange in this, can't see it with the light off, big old mass of flesh. Which seems to be a staple of all my games, can't help it. And here we can see that someone's had a really terrible sleepover. But this door is currently locked. But hopefully people will think to come back here when the time comes. And here we have office. Just to give people another view of the fact that they are in a, you know, a complex underwater if it is. Now, all of this does set dressing, but, you know, hopefully infers a sense of scale to the whole affair. Again, using terminals to lay groundwork as fast as possible. So Atlas project log is basically a list of everything you are going to find down here, namely the pulse rifle, which is a blatant homage to the pulse rifle of Alien, the fusion core kinetic electromagnetic launcher, which is the weapon concept that I've just had in my head and decided to stick into this one, and the indigenous deep sea organisms, which the corporation was trying to bend to their wills, namely Species 8 and Species 17. Now these names mean nothing just yet, and the fact that there is mining going on into a subsurface cavern network where they're finding these creatures. Now, throughout we've got these scattered little hints about Sector Omega. Sector Omega does not appear in this mod, but it is again reinforcing the idea that there is something below all this, namely perhaps a city along the lines of the Deep Ones, which they're trying not to tell anyone about. Recent recovery of a mature Species 70 Queen has exceeded expectations, which, you know, taking the Queen always works so well. And then the personal log of Dr. H. Ryan. H. Ryan was actually, I think, the sound designer on one of the Aliens films. I just scattered in that. So, as always, this is a pre-war lab. The war happened. Bad things went down, namely while the nukes were on the surface, there was still tremors down here, and something went wrong. Things escaped, And then it all went wrong. So we're going to pop downstairs. So coming downstairs, it is dark, but I've tried to use red light as an indicator of go this way, which, you know, seems sensible. Up on the ceiling, we have movement, whether people are going to notice it or not. So the bug patch is a static, well, moving static in the base game. But I extended them into centipedes, but for the life of me, I could not get the back legs to move. I fiddled with the NIF, which is the file format for static items in Fallout, and it just didn't want to happen, which is very annoying. Maybe one day I'll work it out. But anyway, moving on. So, I do like moving lighting in my mods. I'm a sucker for a rotating fan and the variable shadows that that casts. So I do like to include them wherever I go. And I certainly wanted this particular section of the mod to feel very claustrophobic by having the player S-bend on themselves several times, a lot of blind corners. They're not going to know what's coming next, even though at the moment there's nothing to see. That corpse will become vaguely important shortly. Corridors. I tried my best to vary corridor design in this game. I'm using a mixture of the Vault static set because I like it, although I removed all the Vault Tech logos from it. But I still wanted it, much like the Alien films, to have this cramped utilitarian feel to pretty much everything. So the player's been asked to turn the power back on, terminals off, and we have 2 red light bulbs, and then we have a light bulb there, and a light bulb there. So I've seen plenty of people walk straight past it, but oh well. The original purpose of this area was I was planning on jump scaring them with Species 8 much earlier than I did, hence why I was forcing people to walk from one area round to this one, but I eventually decided against it. So instead, they might think something's going to happen, but it doesn't. So, 2 green lights, which means that this is now operational. Power log relay, main purpose of this one is to again point out the surface elevator is not going to start working. Meaning that they need to find another way out of here. Always like this one flashes, and then turns on. Don't know why, that just amuses me. And I put this thing in mostly so we can have some sick lens flare. But anyway, over here we have got our first encounter with Species 8 at the end of this grimly lit corridor. So Species 8, just to give full spoiler, Species 8 is a very large centipede. That's its head. Its body's clinging to the back, which lives in the cavern network, which clings onto people a la the style of headcrabs from Half-Life, if that makes it easier for you. Attaches itself to the nervous system, forces them to go into a feeding/violent frenzy, before slowly bloating up their tummies with its eggs, until they eventually become stationary, turn into the big fleshy masses that we're seeing around the place, and burst, producing the next generation. So they are based on feral ghouls, because, you know, whilst it's a bit cliche to have feral ghouls in a horror mod, I can't deny that they are effective. So again, we've got some lovely texture work by ZP here. We've got the bulging belly, which is an art object, to use a technical term, which is basically a static that can be attached to things that have its own animation set. Namely, this one is from the bulging Brahmin from the Nuka World DLC, the one that gives birth to bloodworms. And yeah, so I want to infer that they were gunners. They're generally holding weapons or have ragtag bits of armour against what the guns normally have. And yeah. And they burst, which I wanted to infer that these things are in fact full of bugs. Just never going to be pleasant. Some of them burst and the body just disappears. Some of them don't. Not sure why. So the voice lines I did for these guys, again, yes, it's all me, I apologise. Some of it is the bugs themselves speaking through them, but also occasionally the gunners having some idea or some semblance of their minds return to them. Anyway, and some of the old classic feral ghoul spawn in, which is obviously a lot scarier when I don't have a zombie walkers mod on. I see ya. So obviously, ideally, especially if there's if the ghouls are faster, people will find this S-bend fairly harrowing. Hey, birdie. So these guys have their own level lists, so most of them will look fairly distinct from one another. Some of them, as you can see, the head has been almost entirely consumed, whereas on some of them the head is still fairly visible. And now the lights are on. I mean, that only helps a little bit. Down here we have some of the obligatory horror game bathrooms with, well, who knows what happened in there. And over here we have an opportunity for a player to discover that they should not trust loot, because otherwise we explode, and we get our first look at Species 8 itself. Which, while they don't actually hurt all that much, again, beautiful texture work. They are upsetting, especially if you dislike bugs, and I made a point of adding in the clickety-clackety little feet. So the leg movement is basically they have two lines, a fairly flat plane of mesh running along the sides of their body, which the legs are just animated to keep on going through that cycle. However, I discovered that when they die, that animation does not stop. So my decision was basically to just have them explode on death so that you don't have to deal with that, because it just ruins the immersion of giant insects. Anyway, we can now go upstairs. Doesn't serve much purpose other than there are beds available here for people playing on survival, which I really should have put more of into the mod itself. Plus another note. Looks like we're bunking down here tonight. Whatever busted the elevator did it after we came down. Harris swears it looked fine when we unloaded. Great. Client says keep moving. Don't trust that doctor. Now, this is a fairly important line, and obviously easy to miss because this is in a non-obligatory location, but so be it. Talks like he's paying us by the minute, never says what we're actually looking for. Worse is his pet, calls him Levi. Guy doesn't say a word, just logs around his fancy metal cape like it'd be worth more than all our contracts put together. Gives him the creeps. Thing is, we're trapped down here. Why isn't the doc worried? Doesn't ask anyone to fix a lift, doesn't even mention it. Makes me think he's got another ride home. Now, I don't know how much the player is worrying about getting out at this point. They might just be enjoying the ride, but, you know, coming out of modded dungeons, again, I wanted something a little bit different for this one because it's so easy just to have, you know, the looping door that goes back to the beginning where you came in, or the elevator that just conveniently takes you back to where you want to be. The general has committed suicide after being stuck here during when things went wrong, which again is just to point out that the war on the surface caused things to go horribly wrong down here when all the critters got out. That was unnecessary music change. That wasn't scripted. So I believe I have a trigger down here. Somewhere. There we go. I fear that something squidgy is walking above us. I'm aware that's probably not what the sound would sound like underwater, but oh well. Buddies. See, these ones explode entirely, not sure why. Yeah, I know you're around here somewhere. You've got stuck right there. That's a bug. Never mind. And down we go. Alright, combat music, you're breaking the ambience. So, I do love lighting. It plays such a major significance in horror mods. Fallout is, while it has the capacity to look fun, it's generally spoiled by the fact that the player, if they don't have a flashlight mod on, will just saturate an entire space in default bright green light, which is a shame. And flashlight mods do help somewhat, but ultimately it's just part of the adventure of trying to make this game as creepy as possible. So keycard, it's for that door over there. I didn't want to make it too hard, but I also didn't want people to miss the pulse rifle, which was hopefully a major selling point for the game. So the pulse rifle, where are we? There. Iconic from the film Aliens. That film, the prop was based off, I believe, the Thompson machine gun, popularly used in the Second World War. And when I came to insert it into the game, you know, it made sense to try and do the same, using the submachine gun that's already in the game, which resembles the Tommy gun, the Thompson, which is, you know, magazine fed at the bottom. However, the pulse rifle has this chunky underbarrel, which I believe is a grenade launcher. It's not in the game, it's just there. Which meant that using the animation set for the submachine gun, the player's hand was clipping all the way up here. Tried it on various other mag-fed ones from the underneath, so the AK from Nuka World and the combat rifle, but it just wasn't working for me, so I settled on the assault rifle. Which meant that it had become side-loaded, but I didn't really mind. I think we made it work, and this is Fallout after all. It doesn't have to be one for one. Again, this has been lovely retextured. The sound work I did myself. It's not exactly straight from the film, but after playing with it a lot in Audacity, I think I got it working okay. However, can't use it just yet. I will save the ammo because I haven't got lots. So each area, I didn't want there to be, you know, generic office space any more than there had to be. So I tried to have each room play a function out of a meeting room. Some offices over here, and some more workshop space over here. Again, another fan. I do love a fan. I've actually seen anything above. Oh no, I'm being attacked. Be scuppered. That's nice of you, Mr. Gunner. Also to provide the player with chem benches, and there's a weapon one back there just in case there's anything they wanted to do, which they're not obliged to, but you never know. Moves bullets just to make things annoying for people. This section here serves very little purpose apart from to try and jump scare the player a little bit, but because of the delights that is the creation engine that Fallout 4 runs on, 8 times out of 10 doesn't work, but today it did. So whilst that box fell off a shelf, that was accumulation of hours of work, simply because the script command, which applies a havoc impulse to a miscellaneous item, is a bit jank and sometimes it just doesn't work. But yeah, I get to you. I did want to try and panic the player. They may not even notice that was there, and if they come round, they'd find that there is a kitty. Hey kitty. Who is invulnerable and nothing bad will happen to the cat. Ginger Cat, which homage to Jonesy from the original Alien film. Obviously the studious players will wonder, why is there a cat here even though the facility's been abandoned underwater for the last 200 years? And I did my best to insert an answer to that shortly. But I didn't want the cat to sit there for the whole length of time, so I decided to have him be irritated and or aggravated by something passing by. Don't worry, cat's fine. So moving on. Another one of these, savvy players will realise that these things are not to be trusted. And another office, complete with cat bowls. And another terminal. Again, so this area was dedicated to weapons research, so it's just a little bit of background on that. Beta Lab, there's first mention of Beta Lab, indicating that there are other laboratories, although not where they are. And the fact that, yes, the acronym for my other weapon in this mod is the Fuckum Launcher. Ellen's about ready to have her kittens. Ellen, obvious homage to Alien, but also to indicate that this cat that we've just seen, or just haven't seen yet, depending on where you go first, is a generational cat, much like Cat from Red Dwarf, who's obviously been doing perfectly well down here, despite the fact that there are creatures around, as cats most likely will outlive us all. And the last one just indicating that stuff is sketchy over in the Species 8 wing, and he's very glad he doesn't have to deal with any of that shit. So through there, I do love the klaxon, because it's just nice dramatic lighting, even if it is blinding me, but we are going this way. Again, trying to use red light to indicate to the player where I would like them to go. And I'm also big on points of no return, simply because it keeps the player moving in the right direction. So this sequence I wanted to set up for the player, knowing that it's not just them and Species 8 down here, and that those enemies have a dynamic between themselves. So you can't actually access this, even though you're probably able to hear that there's stuff in there, even without subtitles. System log is here again to indicate that something, and this is the first use of the word synth, LV426, again, reference to Alien, has been messing with this and playing with the decontamination cycle. Which will then allow us to press a button. Now, most people anticipate this door opening, but I wanted to have a little sequence here. So, we can see that in this otherwise fairly clean room, we've just got a load of these boys hanging out where they've apparently been trapped, only for things to go a little bit wrong. And by the bad light of this klaxon, we become aware that something else, beautifully highlighted, is in there, and violence ensues. Everyone I've seen tends to panic when this door opens, even though at this point everything is gone and the lights are swinging. So I'm just trying to encroach on the player the idea that they are not alone down here. Again, door shutting behind you, just to keep you moving in the right direction. As we move into the Species 8 area, so with everything in here, I wanted to infer that something has been in and made very clear that Species 8 cannot get any further. Whilst also indicating that some bad juju went down here where people did not have a great appreciation for human life. Mandatory offsets where people can go and get the delicious loot if they want it, but doing so will trigger some sound effects. That's not real, that is just a sound effect, but they don't know that. As we head upstairs. So we now enter into the lore dump area, which people are not at all obliged to do. But for anyone who is interested in Species 8, I give them the opportunity to. So this terminal, again, is mostly to indicate that stuff has been happening in the recent past where data is being stolen. On both of these. And just to allow people to still have a thing, I decided to put this one in, and many thanks to Riven, who was kind enough to donate their voice for this particular portion of the mod, just so it wasn't me doing a bad American accent for the upteenth time. Yeah.
Welcome to the Species 8 research program. Discovered within the deep aquatic cave system beneath this facility, Species 8 is an indigenous parasitic organism exhibiting an exceptionally sophisticated neurological life cycle. Following capture, the parasite restrains a suitable host and establishes a direct connection with the central nervous system. Once integrated, the host behavior can be predictably altered, dramatically increasing aggression, pain tolerance, and physical endurance while preserving basic motor function. After a feeding phase, the host undergoes extensive psychological changes, creating an ideal environment for the parasite's reproductive cycle. While these characteristics present obvious biological hazards, they also represent significant opportunities for military and intelligence applications, including area denial, force multiplication, counterinsurgency, and covert destabilization operations. Atlas Laboratories remains committed to exploring the full strategic potential of this remarkable organism, safely, responsibly, and in service of the United States.
Thank you again to Riven for being a, corporate baddie. The screens I put in just because rather than having walls and walls of text locked into a terminal, I wanted something environmental that people are not at all obliged to read, but the information is there if you really want to get into the behavioural ecology of an animal, which anyone who knows me knows is kind of my bag. So, anyway, moving on. So again, going back to my earlier point about the deep ones, they are still watching us. Over there, to be specific. Always watching. Just hanging out, seeing how we're getting on. Which is mostly just an excuse because the rest of the cell does appear beyond the water, which is why some things appear not to have walls, but my general hope is that you couldn't really tell from this greater distance whether it's solid or not. So coming through into this area, we're about to get hit by another musical sting. Most people tend not to notice it, but down there is one of the Species 17 themselves. Now this one is marked as a ghost, and the door shuts before you can really do anything, and even if you were to run down these stairs, he would be disabled as soon as you entered into the door, one floor down, just to be on the safe side. But for those that noticed, great. We also have some bloodstains. Now, these guys do not bleed acid. I thought about it and then decided I just didn't want to try and work because the mechanisms would be a bit too iffy. So come through here, we find the sad, departed, late Dr. Scott. Custom outfit, which I wanted to infer that these guys are in fact Institute, in that what he's wearing is the texture map of the Corsair uniform applied to a different coat. So a little bit Institute, a little bit science. Yeah. Before we come to another lore dump. Namely the fact that, yes, they were working with two species. 17, the big boys, and species 8 because of their psychological value. And the fact that these two guys, these two teams did not necessarily get along, with species 17 research being based again down in Beta Lab. And again, one more hint that there's something going on elsewhere, far below in Omega Sector, that is of interest and secret. Now, emergency log, yet another, oh god, the bomb's dropping and everything's going horribly wrong, but it's also our first indication that it confirms a beta breach. They must have climbed up the drill site and into sub-level 3, which is our first tidbit that drill walls are going to be important to getting out of here. I'm just going to check the tape, listen to that in a minute, and deactivate the lockdown, which enables us to move forward. So listening to the tape is not at all mandatory, but you know. So I think we'll listen to that whilst I expose you to some more of my terrible voice acting. Music. There we go.
Dr. Scott?
I'm alright. No, I'm not.
Your injuries are fatal.
Yeah, I figured as much. Listen, carefully. Sub-level 3. The Triton laser drill. Take the excavation shaft. It leads right down into the secondary lab.
Acknowledged.
Retrieve the rest of the samples. Once you have them, use the emergency relay. It'll take you clear of the facility.
And you?
I'll reactivate the lockdown from here. Might slow them down for long enough.
That action will not improve your probability of survival.
No. But I appreciate the sentiment.
Mission parameters remain unchanged.
That's right. Good hunting, Levi.
Understood.
So I hope that holotape would fill in a lot of the gaps about what the hell is going on here. To catch everyone up, this was a pre-war facility where they were doing sketchy things. Bombs drop, everything goes wrong, critters escape. Dolphin! And it then sits quietly for 200 years. Dr. Scott, who we haven't guessed thus far, but the fact that he has a companion with a designation that looks suspiciously like that of a synth, is a member of the Institute, and his bodyguard, Levi, or LV-426, is a Courser, and they have come down here to collect samples using the gunners that they have employed as cannon fodder and or disposable test subjects. Things went wrong, the gunners got caught unawares by species 8, most of them had turned into the hosts which we have been killing all of this time, but in an effort to push forward, Dr. Scott was injured and has sent Levi on. So that segment was interesting in that we were never actually in any danger. There are no enemies in this particular locale. They are located beyond these walls, and they are actually a collection of rad roaches, which spawn in gradually and then are simultaneously disabled on the musical cue, which I thought was quite fun, just to indicate that you are very much entering into Species 17's house. But anyway, so the holotape hopefully infer that A, Levi has carried on, and he has a teleport relay. which is his ticket out of here, and he is continuing to try and gather more information. So, moving on, we're going to hear another funk. There we go. Which will hopefully get the player to look around wondering what's going on, whereupon they will probably notice they are being charged at by what does resemble, I'll grant you, a Mirelurk King. Now it is mostly a Mirelurk King, however you'll notice if you've seen many Mirelurk Kings it's moving completely differently. That's because he is not exactly similar. The mesh has been tweaked, the fins have been made a different shape, the head is different, but he's also been rigged onto the Deathclaw skeleton with the Gulper animations, which I used because I enjoy their movement. They have this fun sliding along on their tummy animation attack, which I thought would be appropriate for a semi-aquatic creature. Again, ZP's done a nice job at making these guys a bit more xenomorphy. My textures were a bit more deep water fish. Ow. Ow. See that one? There we go. So, all these guys be tough, but not too tough. So, as with all my creatures, balancing is always going to be difficult. So, these guys are just using the leveled Gulper stats. So, as whatever level of toughness they would be at level 25, which is what my character is, that's what these guys are at. So, there we go. Yes, these doors, I added a delay, just for those players that don't want to fight. They press a button, the door does not immediately shut, just to really add that element of panic, because I'm a dick. Let's move down into this flooded section. On versions 1 through 1.3, this water was completely transparent, because I quite liked the way it looked. However, on discussion with people, adding a bit of murk, while still being transparent mostly, in fairness, was a bit more effective because you just can't see what's coming. So through here, we have another skeleton holding an access card and a note that doesn't really indicate much other than that there is a unique weapon somewhere to be found. This access space I put in, it's essentially just a loop back. It doesn't go anywhere, it just goes from there, through here, to here. Now you're going to be fighting various species 17 in this area, and I wanted people to have the ability to get into a space that they're not sure if they can be pursued down. The actual nav mesh for the creatures to stop where I'm standing, so they can technically enter, but then they can't get down here. And I've had a few people say that they get stuck, which is fair, unless you turn sideways, in which case you get through. So this was the result of much painstaking, slight, tiny movements of the statics until you could get through, but much like a person desperately trying to move through a confined space and getting a little bit stuck, you have to shimmy around a bit. So this is sub-level 3, which is inferred to be, an area servicing a big old drill, which is true. But because it's underwater, you have the advantage of being able to hear them moving around, even if, like me, you don't necessarily have your compass on all the time. And then this room here indicates where we need to go, because most people will hopefully look and say, oh look, power armor, joy, but we do need a password. So we're going to go over here into the obligatory underwater diving bit, just because I know people hate diving. I mean, so do I, as of Sonic the Hedgehog. Again, more spinny light effects, because I can't help myself. Up into this space. Through here. We have got the unique, that being Bug Hunt.
Yes.
Which does more damage against Mirelurks and bugs, the two things that we're actually facing down here. And it has the homage to the motion tracker, which In this game is actually a smart gun tracking system which sort of encapsulates the two bits of tech that we see in the Aliens film, that being the motion tracker and the smart guns used on the heavy weapons carried by the Marines. This does not function, unfortunately. As much as I wish it did, that sort of thing is far beyond me. But it will lock and fire, which I still think is quite a fun mechanic, and it looks like it. So I think that's kind of fun. Another screen, hopefully doing a bit of environmental storytelling as to what's going on, namely that we are up here in the Alpha Lab, and then there is a hole in the ground leading to Beta, and below that is the symbol for Omega, which we will not be visiting. And a big round thing, which will hopefully look familiar soon enough. More lore. Namely the fact that there is a drill, which allows you to access the other laboratories, Beta Lab being the one that we have been told about, housing Species 17, and also indicating that no lifts are currently functioning, which means that you need to go via the drill hole, and that you need power armor, otherwise you will explode or implode. Now, just to legitimize why you needed to come all the way over here and get a password is just basically to allow me to dump this lore and get a bit more movement around the cell, otherwise you'd just be walking in and going straight to the padlock airlock. And unrecognized machine code is some more fiddling by our friend LV426 or Levi, where he's reset the password just so he can proceed, which is nice of him. Now, jump scares, not something easily done in Fallout unless people are coming towards you. However, I wanted people to think that previously cleared areas are safe, which is fine, until you look up there and realise that this guy has materialised since we were last here, and he will ambush the player as soon as they walk down these stairs. He does a little wiggle, down to the floor, and this weapon is hideously overpowered when dealing with these guys. That animation in the base game actually has a noise cue associated with it, a sort of a noise, which I removed because I didn't want people to realise that they were there. The footer section. Again, just to keep player on their toes. This chap, who was not previously there, has now spawned in. Lovely. Don't know what mod that was. But now we have the password, so we can come over here and unlock this. So again, diving safety, wear power armor, otherwise you will die. The access procedure, so this was basically just a step-by-step guide of what to do next. Again, this is me trying to direct the player without using quest markers. So namely, you enter, you do let the airlock do its thing, you walk around to the next room, you open a hole, and then you step into it. Suit transponder status is just to indicate again that there are two suits, and one of them is already at Beta Lab. Sort of, you are playing catch up with Levi, and then open. So the power armor, again, some lovely retexture work by ZP, although the original pixels were also very nice, they were done by Pine Dog. So this power armor is partially reused from Mechanist Omega, one of my first quest mods. Dungeon, I should say. It wasn't really a quest, you just walked through and shot things. But with a few differences, I've added this dome to really capture that aquatic underwater pressure suit / spacesuit vibe, whilst also keeping this somewhat gritty industrial tone to the whole thing. So, because I wanted the player's head to be, exposed in this dome, this is not actually got a proper power armor helmet. You can wear a power armor helmet with it if you like. But then I had the issue of how do I give the player light, because we're going to continue to be in a very dark area. The one thing you could have done, or I could have done, was attach a light to the torso piece, but then that would have always been facing forwards, and I wanted the player to be able to, you know, continue using head tracking. So I ended up just creating this rebreather, which has a light attached to it, much like the mining helmet. So on we go. Stepping into the airlock. Now the airlock, again, was used with reference to a vanilla piece of gameplay, that being the Western Water Treatment Plant, where you are lowering water levels to proceed exposing Mirelocks as you go along. So I just dug that open and looked at how it worked, and then was able to implement it here. So the moment that goes up, press proceeds, and around us is spawned a trigger box, which causes this message to appear. You are in a high pressure environment, remain in your power armor. Failure to do so will result in immediate, catastrophic, and very fatal implosion. Understood. So I don't really want to demonstrate, but if we were to step out of our power armor now, the quest is checking every 0.25 seconds whether we are still in power armor, and if it finds you are not in power armor, it spawns on your player a very large and powerful explosion, which will fairly immediately kill you. And that was just to sort of force the player into this section of walking in a slow and rather vulnerable way through the next segment, rather than swimming around and doing stuff. So I try my best to make it obvious what people are meant to do, namely press a button. But people don't sometimes pay attention, which is fine, or they just jump straight down. So I don't know if you can see down there is a green light. That is a secondary button for those that jump down and miss this one. To this day, I'm not sure why we seem to impact on things during this drop. Happened several times. Bump, 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 bump. We are literally not hitting anything. Like, there's only one bit of water, that's right above us. So yeah, no idea. So anyway, we enter into this underwater segment, which there's nothing here. Spoilers. It is a large cave system. I have some fishies. We are technically being watched. Again, it's very hard to see. I don't know if I turn the EMB back on, whether I'll be able to see them or not. But up in some corners, there are some caves, sort of over there, and I can have one up there, which actually do contain more of the deep ones, who are continuing to watch you even as you go along, but they're really only visible if you happen to have mods that make things incredibly bright. Bang that one back off again. So for this one, I just want people to feel the vulnerability of being underwater, not being able to run away, and not knowing what stuff is. So there's going to be a sound cue now. There we go, just indicating that this cave system is perhaps not somewhere we want to linger. During development, I actually played around with having some tiny little Mirelurk crabs in here, like designed differently, but they would just look like little crabs that would run away from the player. But it's just, they didn't quite look quite right, and I didn't want people getting distracted. So this is just a short walk of wondering what's around us, just because no one ever seems to make much use of the underwater movement mechanic that power armor has. As we step into the next one. Wait for it to cycle. So Levi has left his power armor here. This is mostly so that people have an excuse to nab the armor pieces of a second set if they want it, but that's up to them. And in a cruel irony, I'm actually going to leave the power armor here because I prefer going on foot. So again, I just wanted to capture some of that fun alien-esque lighting, and again by making the corridors seem a lot more busy and textured, so it's not just running down yet another vault corridor. with, again, many flashy lights. So in earlier versions of the mod, like unreleased, you'd come through here and you'd hear distant gunfire. I really wanted to infer that actually we are gaining on Levi as he fights through, but I ended up scrapping that one and felt it was just better to leave the place abandoned. But I did leave in the evidence of its passing, by the fact that there are various dead species 17 creatures around here. So the FCK brackets EM launcher I wanted to be missable for a start. You don't have to have it if you don't want it. That's the thing, you know, sometimes people miss things, but if they ever come back on a second playthrough, then maybe they'll discover it and be like, huh, that's fun. But I also wanted varying level. I didn't want anyone to miss out if they were going to explore and find it. So the door just down there is expert locked. This one is advanced locked. And this one around here is only novice locked. So people have the option as long as they've got the bobby pins. If you don't have bobby pins, then tough, or you shoot it open if you have a mod like I do. And I want the player to come in sort of have this vague introduction to various things. One, that they've been playing with magnetic weapons, which was inferred earlier, firing fusion core shells, which is a unique ammo sort for the mod, mandatory theft, and then if they do come in this way, be forced to go through this tunnel, well, they'll be confronted with the fact that the aliens, species 17 has started making itself at home. Moving through into this X area where they've clearly been redecorating, so that's the advanced door again, and then we drop down here into this particular workspace where we can see, again, textures courtesy of ZP, because originally I based it off using the Tesla Canon textures from the creation thingy, Enclave Remnants, but obviously some people have downgraded or just never got the next gen update, which is entirely sensible, and so this was pink. So they were nice enough to make a new texture set so that it's entirely independent. But we can't get in here, it's an expert lock, the terminal next to it is expert, but again, if people have come this far, I don't want to leave it empty-handed. So whilst wandering around and hopefully looting things, they will come across this note, which, saving the effort, indicates that if the power breaker should trip, the case opens, which is, you know, fairly straightforward. So again, cable leading from here round to over here to the breaker switch, and for the life of me, I cannot get this circuit breaker switch to animate. Like the one back at the very surface, animates perfectly. This one, nothing. Exactly the same settings. No idea why. So anyway, that causes the ever popular klaxon to go off, case to open, but unfortunately an unfriendly friend to drop down, which is what you get for setting off alarms, I suppose. So yeah, we now have the tactical rocket launcher. So this is based off of the harpoon gun, in that it's single shot, thing goes in there, goes ka-chow, and in this case I basically just wanted a weapon that was, if not overpowered, then mostly just a little bit funny, because the enchantment on it basically, if an enemy is hit by the projectile, they will ragdoll backwards massively and then explode after about a second, which I thought was just fun. The Magnetics Research Terminal doesn't say an awful lot, it's just gumph mostly, and allows the player to unlock the case if they haven't done it by alternative means. And I did wonder when I was building this whether I should be trying to build in some means of making sure that the player doesn't fire this down here, because let's be honest, in realistic terms, firing a fusion core explosive underwater is probably not a good idea for the facility, but in the end I didn't want people to, you know, feel they couldn't go using things. So clearly this facility was just made of CERN stuff. And we have another obligatory ambush. Ow. And then we'll move through into the species 17 area, which is... I see you. Come on, buddy. Ow. I do like how those textures work under the blue light. Very xenomorph. Anyway, so I also wanted to indicate that the 17s are building themselves a hive here with this fun texture stuff and a little bit of the entirely inappropriate conditions that the scientists were keeping them under whilst experimenting on. So again, wanted some eggs that were going to be vaguely reminiscent of the ones from Alien, even though there are no facehugger goods in this mod. And that's not how Species 17, reproduce. But oh well. So terminal here, bit more background about Species 17. Again, having had it stolen already by LV-46, but just to indicate that they are basically the xenomorphs minus the acidic blood. They do have the secondary jaw. It's on the model, but you don't tend to notice it unless they're doing their sort of snarly, howling, open mouth animation at you. Again, stuff missing, but their attempts to domesticate them, which obviously didn't go well. I'm sure people might have liked to have a companion one, but I really hate setting up companion stuff in the creation kit. And the only other times I've tried to do it, once in Mechanist Omega with a turret bot, and then with Stumpy the Velociraptor in Enclave Secrets. It just didn't work. So I just decided not to this time. Small thing, these lights, they don't appear anywhere else. These ones are part of the Vault set, but I decided that I'm just going to set up a custom gobbo, I'm not sure the term is. Basically, it's something you can apply to lights that have it come out in shapes. So I made a custom one just to indicate how these lights might work. Don't appear anywhere else, only used here, but I just thought they were fun. One last lab, a bit of subtle foreshadowing of what the player is about to see. The obligatory end quest, just to indicate that yes, you are reaching the end. And one more terminal, which don't do much other than indicating that they've again had data stolen by LV-46 and that they have been breeding them, and that the royal jelly compound is useful for slowing down time, which is basically just a usable chemical for the player, which is basically Jet and Med-X combined. On we go. Into the last bit. So immediately I wanted the player to be confronted by the tree, as it were, and anyone familiar with the Alien films to get a glimpse of what lies below, hopefully evoking those scenes from the first film where the rather silly people wander into the field of Facehugger X. And the eagle eye players will probably notice the fact that these guys are sitting suspended from the ceiling and that they're in for a fight. However, they are unable to do anything about it at this time because glass. Initially, I had this upper area be a lot more dense with the ribs and all that sort of stuff, but it ended up just feeling a bit too busy and it lost some of its focus, so I ended up just removing it. It would have obscured these guys a bit more, I suppose. It might have been a bit more surprising, but in some way I didn't mind people being a bit forewarned as to what was going to come. So as we descend, which was hopefully to indicate that this is not a situation we can quickly exit from, and we go down to the surface. So over there, we can see that LV-426 did not do too well, as he's dead. I wanted the player to have the capability of getting a few assault rifles during their time here, so there's a total of 4 throughout the map, one of those being the unique. And again, he's wearing a custom armor based off of the coarser textures, but with some additional armor plating based off of Kellogg's, just to again have that aesthetic association with the Institute. And there is his case. So the player will hopefully realise that means escaping this whole area is on him. However, obviously attaching quest vital things to a corpse has its downsides, as he could well be flung around, get lodged into something, or just disappear entirely because Bethesda. So I ended up putting in this fancy metal case that he's been looking throughout the whole facility to, carry samples, and that contains our means out, as that cannot be affected by anything that happens now. So this section it is essentially a boss battle. I have fallen into this trap of doing them at the end of some of my mods, because with a narrative experience, people tend to sort of expect it. However, so many of them end up being anticlimactic simply because, depending on your load order, the weapons you're packing, and all that jazz, you can take down enemies very strongly. As said, all the enemies in this game are based off of leveled creatures from vanilla. So the drones are based off of Gulpers. The Queen, when she appears, is a leveled Deathclaw. So she will be as strong as one of those is. I'm afraid I can't help it if you don't find it challenging. So there's a series of invisible trigger points around this map. So one will trigger as soon as we pass an invisible line along here. There we go, there will be wiggling. Yes, this weapon is overpowered. So I wanted players to have the option to essentially sneak over here if they really wanted to, so that they could, just come over here. But there she is. That would then cause the Queen to spawn, looking very lovely in the lighting, if I do say so myself. And most players will then start ringing around the rosy-ing, but that will also then trigger further drones to drop down. Run away. So this battle is actually harder in power armor than it is out of it, because these guys, both the Deathclaw and the Gulper, have power armor third person animations for attacking. Ow. Where they pick up the power armor and fling it, and it is possible to get stun locked in a cycle if you are surrounded by these guys, which, I don't know, it's a battle about, you could remove their ability to do it, but in some ways I felt that spoiled the experience, especially when it's earlier on and it's one-on-one of the players of power armor, and there's something, fear-inducing about being picked up and thrown by this one-on-one creature, but I will recognise that it does become difficult. So anyway, yeah, so the Queen has a raw jelly and a trophy, which is actually her head. Now, I tried to find a way of essentially exploding her head when you take the trophy. If anyone's played Attack of the Lobotomites, which is an excellent mod, really go play it, they have a scripted, you loot from corpses, and they have these implants that then explode. But I just couldn't work it out for myself, so I didn't, but c'est la vie. So the issue a lot of people had, well not a lot, but some people had, is if they haven't, if they've shot through, they haven't picked up on the subtle hints about what to do next. I did have the teleport relay be a featured item, which means that when you pick it up, it then appears here, because some of the reports were on earlier playthroughs that people were just emptying the chest as fast as possible, and it was in there, and they just didn't twig what they picked up, whereas here, it's here, and it literally says, return to the surface. I don't know, some people were hoping that there would be more, but I'm afraid not. I did consider alternative exits from the dungeon, um, like another elevator or some sort of like escape pod almost. But in all honesty, the idea of backtracking, I found the idea sort of appealing in that maybe you kill the queen or you don't have to. Pisses everything off, you'll start getting attacked as you try and backtrack back to uh, an escape pod like thing, but in the end I just didn't have the energy, if I'm being brutally honest. So I inserted the teleport relay just to again indicate that this was a Institute mission at the end of the day, for better or for ill. And so, yeah, so again, press it.
Emergency teleport relay engaged. Activating in 10.
And I added a countdown just in case people frantically wanted to run round, gathering things up and getting out of there. But in our case, nope. And there you have it. That was Breach from start to finish. We have returned to the surface. Hopefully a little bit older, a little bit wiser, and carrying some new stuff. So, unlike a lot of my mods, this one has some very clear takeaways. In that you've gained some weapons. If you're still wearing it, you've got the power armor. You've got some drugs. You've got some eggs that can be turned into an omelette, much like the Marlock one, but with a slightly different impact. And we do have the Queen's Head, which, if you really want, you can take back to your settlement and you can mount it on the wall in the best Yautja Predator display style possible. But yeah, that was about it. Thank you very much for sticking with me. I tend to take a bit of a hiatus after making a mod. This one took me a couple of months of spuddling, so I'll probably leave it for a time now, but we'll see. We'll wait for the next thing to inspire me and decide what the next mod is going to be. It might not be a quest, it might be something a bit different, but only way to find out. Until then, thank you very much for sticking with me. Thank you to everyone who has supported me throughout the creation of this mod, and thank you to you for listening to me ramble on for however long. Take care, and goodbye.